Hello, we will begin in 2 minutes.
Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por estar presentes en
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being part of this last panel of the seminar today. And not least important, though. And I will leave you now with the moderator of this panel, Eleonora Carrillo, partner in Jacobacci, and she will introduce this panel. The expansion of traditional trademarks in the Metaverse. Anthony Lupo, ArentFox Schiff, USA. William Finkel, Suite, USA. Abrams, Kering, USA. Moderator, Eleonora Carrillo, Jacobacci and Partners, S.L.U, Spain. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I think it's worthwhile to be this last day of the seminar and this last panel, not only because we will cover a very interesting topic, which is the expansion of traditional trademarks in Metaverse, but because we also have three magnificent speakers, which I'll introduce briefly, who will give us their contributions from different approach, from business, from technological content, and from the legal perspective and intellectual property. As a brief introduction, I would like to make some reflections. And first of all, if we consider Metaverse as the future version of Internet, and if we recall the importance that the adoption of Internet had and the evolution, although they might revolutionize society and the market, on the other hand, it's also true that it means for businesses to face new challenges and difficulties that didn't exist in the past. And I think all of this entails for all of us as IP experts the need to have a very good understanding of the scope of this new environment and of the new legal issues it brings, specifically what refers to a good and proper education of the trademarks. Without a doubt, I believe that Metaverse generates numerous questions and issues in IP. And to conclude, I believe that it's clear that legal implications of Metaverse have started. And it's undeniable the power of Metaverse as a new social reality that goes beyond just entertainment, for which new regulations are being considered. So in this regard, today, our speakers will help us explain this topic and speaking about the expansion of traditional trademarks. And we'll speak specifically of how trademarks have entered this new environment. They'll also refer to some practical cases we'll see together with them, and we'll discuss legal implications, speak about strategies as far as trademark protection. And finally, we'll speak about the innovative system of crypto domains and the differences between these and the traditional domains. And for all of this, I would like to introduce our panelists, and in the order they'll speak. First of all, Eva Abrams. She's a legal director and compliance of Americas, representing the interests of the firm in luxury trademarks, Gucci, Saint Laurent, Bottega Veneta, and in the U.S., Canada, Mexico, and Latin America. Eva has worked very successfully as a professor of the School of Law, Fulham, and before joining Kering, she was compliance director and privacy in Tiffany & Company. And William Finkel. William is a legal director for Suite.io, a leading company providing digital collectibles for entertainment and sports, as well as of NFTs. Before coming to Suite, William was vice president of legal and commercial affairs in Walnut Media, and throughout his career, William has specialized in legal matters and licensing startups and technology sector. And finally, Anthony Lupo, president of ArentFox Schiff, has led that firm, making it the first and most important firm of lawyers being part of Metaverse. Anthony practices mainly in three areas: entertainment law, where he represents Water Rose, Discovery Channel, Winfrey, and fashion, where he represents for Yves Saint Laurent, Versace, Fila, Christian Louboutin, and in technology, where he represents Tesla, PlayStation, and LG in the technological space. Thank you very much, and we now give the floor to the presentations. And Eva, the floor is yours.
I could understand even a third of what you shared, so forgive me if I cover some already covered ground. But thanks everyone for being here. We know it's difficult to come to the last presentation after a lunch, after having such an amazing day and a half's worth of presentations from expert panelists, but we appreciate you hanging in there for our panel, and we hope that, thank you. We hope, I'll see if I can figure out how to use this. We hope we can share some practical insights about how brands are starting to encounter the metaverse and explore Web3. I'll share with you a little bit about how our brands have started to navigate these waters, what it means for us, and what the alignments are from a brand perspective. So here we go. Let's see. All right, good. So I think that a lot of our panelists have covered sort of the basics about Web 1, 2, and 3. So I'm not going to go into the foundational details. I think you're all experts by now. But I think it would be useful to give you the brand perspective on what each of these web moments have been, and how brands have looked at each of them and have attempted to play in each of them. So Web 1 is interesting because it's sort of the advent of the web in the 1990s. And from a luxury brand perspective, this was a big observational opportunity. If you guys can recall, those of you that were living through it as adults, this was the moment of Amazon being a bookseller, of eBay 1.0 being a trading platform, and of chat rooms and instant messaging and communications. It wasn't exactly the purview and the platform for luxury brands at the time. So you probably don't remember seeing Gucci handbags, Louis Vuitton handbags, Tiffany jewelry being sold in the early 1990s. This was an area of observation and potential opportunity. That being said, this was the advent of e-commerce, and so brands, I think, eagerly watched to see how consumers were reacting to the web, but without really opportunities to engage from a luxury brand perspective. And if you can recall, luxury brands were quite small at the time as well. Without the internet, their footprints were smaller, even in real life, and customer acquisition strategies were very manual, and the advent of sort of a borderless economy wasn't quite there yet. So Web 1 for brands was basically a watch and see approach. Web 2, that sort of started generating a little bit of more interest from a luxury brand perspective. It gave brands the opportunity to marry customer acquisition strategies with advertising. So that's when we began seeing brands proliferate on social media, launch their first and second versions and third versions of websites, begin engaging with consumers online, and stop being as fearful about the web as a place where they might lose the exclusivity and allure of the brands, and started to embrace, largely with the launch of the iPhone and proliferation of smartphones in general, launch different ways of interacting with consumers online. And this was an incredible 20 years, basically, for brands, because not only could they engage with new consumers and develop a new channel of business, e-commerce and omni-channel, but they also were gaining a lot of business insights. Business intelligence increased, customer relationship management, CRM, was really invented at the time. And so that allowed brands to grow, double-digit growth in many cases in the luxury industry over a couple of decades, and really that amplification and acceleration was due to Web 2. The problem is, in Web 2, as we've talked about over the last day and a half, there are guardrails. It's basically controlled by the big four, GAFA, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Alibaba, among the biggest. And so that presents limitations, puts walls up around what luxury brands and all brands can really do and accomplish. And also limits their ability to monetize and create, like we've talked about also, interoperable opportunities. And that's where Web 3 comes in. Web 3 is an incredible opportunity, and the Metaverse is an incredible opportunity for brands to kind of create borderless experiences for consumers. Allows them to dip in and out of different worlds and create even, this third new channel of business in the Metaverse beyond just social media monetization and e-commerce monetization. And it also is very interesting because the Metaverse and its characteristics are very similar and aligned with at least the luxury brand values and philosophies. And that's really of creativity, community, and scarcity. And I'll talk about this in a little bit relative to NFTs, but those three components, which are so active in the Metaverse and create so much opportunity, are perfectly aligned with the decades-long philosophy and history of luxury brands. So what is Kering doing in this space? I think some of you may have heard, a number of panelists have referred to Gucci activations, Balenciaga activations, two of our major brands that have been early adopters in this space. This is not a surprise for any of us that know Kering. Kering has evolved in many ways over its years of existence. It was founded in the 1960s as a family business, and in the timber industry in particular. So a far evolution from where we are now, but that can give you an idea of the fact that innovation, reimagination, and evolution are part of the company's DNA. And over time, the company diversified and expanded into other areas by being curious, by empowering its employees' imaginations, and ultimately innovating. And here we are now, Kering being a company, a pure luxury conglomerate with 10 luxury brands, both in the soft and hard luxury spaces. And as part of that DNA, our CEO has really embraced this try and learn philosophy. And that's why, we've seen, some of our colleagues speaking about Gucci and Balenciaga, they really embrace and are perfect examples of that try and learn philosophy. So we have been trying and learning, in particular Gucci and Balenciaga, for some time now. The most prominent explorations in the metaverse have been owned by these two companies. But before I do a deep dive on the, relative to the images that we have here, I wanted to share with you sort of one of the first explorations into the metaverse happened nearly 2 years ago with Balenciaga. So instead of dipping their toe in one or two of the available platforms, working with an existing gaming company, they decided to jump in, I would say dive in headfirst, and create their own game opportunity for consumers. So in December 2020, they launched a virtual version of their Spring/Summer 2021 collection in a video game called Afterworld. And it was a completely Balenciaga created user experience and game that included opportunities for users to explore 5 different zones where they could engage with, in each zone, 10 pieces of a 50-piece collection. And the game was called From City to Mountain, and it started in a boutique, allowing the user to explore avatars wearing the pieces in the collection. They could turn around full 360. The avatars were made from 3D models of actual human models that were photographed and videoed at every single angle. The designs of the collection, the details of the pleats in the fabric and the way that the dresses and the fabrics moved depending on their actual weight in real life were all taken into consideration when designing this game. And then users would progress through each zone, the first zone being the store, the second zone being in the street. You could see an entire cityscape. The next one in sort of the warehouse district. And finally, the user would be following a little rabbit into zone 4, which would be a forest that opened up into a rave. And then finally, at the mountaintop represented the 5th zone and the end of the collection. And this was really revolutionary at the time, and it's funny to say revolutionary about something that happened a year and a half ago, but it's really the case, because no brand had really on its own created an independent metaverse experience like this. It was just a test. It fell squarely within the try and learn philosophy, but it was really exceptional. You can, by the way, all see a video of this. You can't play the game anymore, but you can see the video of it at videogame.balenciaga.com. So you can kind of experience and see the quality of the experience. And the beauty of this experience is that it was a moment in time for Balenciaga, and it allowed them to gain key learnings, both about the complexities around creating really sort of rich experiences for users, the quality of the materials, the way they moved, how much space and data it takes to achieve that. But it also helped them to understand how to create a game, and the fact that they had to keep users moving through the game and do it in a user-friendly way in order to achieve a good user experience and get the most users out of this universe. And it wasn't about making money. There was no monetization component to this. In fact, this was probably a few steps before monetizing these types of spaces was really active. But it was a great key learning for the brand that has since continued to expand into different metaverse areas and begin to monetize and consider revenue streams related to Web3 in the metaverse, and most prominently related to its collaboration with Fortnite. So I would say the distinction between Afterworld, which was its own game, and future collaborations was that Afterworld was a branded collaboration, technology exploration, and a learning opportunity. And then Fortnite and Roblox and Simpsons collaborations that followed were really tied to partnerships and exploring, taking it to the next level, potential monetization, customer acquisition, understanding how users engaged with these platforms and with the items, the digital assets that were sold on these platforms. So that kind of can give you an idea about how our brands have kind of started. So Gucci's our other resident exploring brand at the time. And Gucci really started its exploration in the NFT space. About a year ago, it partnered with Christie's to sell a digital little video, an NFT of a video that represented its Gucci area collection. And it partnered with Christie's as its first foray into NFTs because that made sense. Another thing that luxury brands look at is whether the partner collaborations and whether the projects themselves make sense to the brand, are authentic to the brand, and can create a rich user experience. And the project was a wild success. I mean, from a media perspective, it was very interesting. It was picked up by all facets of the media, and the NFT sold for $25,000, which was an amazing success for the first NFT that the brand has ever launched, and wasn't sure what would come of it. There's a lot of interest and a lot of buzz around it. And that sort of paved the way for Gucci to try different avenues and different explorations. And Gucci, as opposed to Balenciaga, which kind of dove headfirst and created its own sort of mini metaverse, Gucci decided to look to partners initially, and most prominently has worked with Roblox. So I'm going to ask the team to play the video, and then I'll give you a little bit more insights into the project. So a really exciting project. That video actually came in connection with Gucci winning a Webby Award for this collaboration. But the idea behind this collaboration with Roblox was to create a virtual experience that sort of mirrored an real-life experience. And in fact, a Gucci Vault pop-up was part of the complement, a real pop-up. It was part of the complement to this digital space. And as you can see in the video, digital products were sold for avatars, and then traded and retraded at increasing value. So again, these concepts of community, creativity, and scarcity even driving value are very evident in projects like this. In the digital space, just like in the real life space, your avatar would walk in and then be neutralized. So whatever you were wearing would be removed and you'd get something kind of plain. And you could walk through the space and become whatever that room was. So a garden in one room, or sort of a cool disco-y kind of room in the second space. Another room was a vault of different accessories that you could try on, sunglasses and shoes. So it creates experiences that this was an opportunity to create experiences that could mimic what one could experience in real life, but in an amplified way, and one that could surprise and delight clients in ways that you could never do in real life. So this was a great experiment that will continue to be replicated and can be continued to be replicated in the Gucci environment, offering new products. It can be a vessel in which the brand continues to engage with customers. In addition to this particular drop, Gucci, around the same time, also launched its first Discord channel, which was also wildly successful. A very interesting experiment because, as some panelists have talked to before, just to refresh your recollection, Discord is a social media-ish platform that is popular with the gaming community and the crypto community, and provides opportunities for the community to discuss and to engage, and is really, this is my own very poor definition, but it's sort of like if traditional social media meets up with Reddit. So there's the freedom of a Reddit-type community, but also engagements based on specific topics. So Gucci launched its Discord, and that became a very interesting platform for them to monitor and understand. It's super different from social media. What does it mean? It's a very open environment that doesn't have the same brand controls and guardrails that traditional social media platforms have. So you have fans engaging with some Gucci employees and some non-Gucci moderators, mods, that are part of this community. And the interesting key learning that they discovered was that it's all the time. It's persistent. It's something that needs to be monitored and viewed and absorbed all the time to kind of understand what it means and to keep the community engaged. If you just, open the Discord and you leave the room, then you're missing an opportunity to have this constant contact with customers. So, it's interesting because it kind of blends these concepts of customer acquisition and customer engagement that started to develop in the Web 2 space and moves them into the metaverse. And you realize that in order to take advantage of these spaces, you have to increase your engagement with your customers. And since that Discord launch, there have been a number of different initiatives that the brand has been exploring, including a collaboration with a digital avatar called Wagmi-san, who Alessandro Michele, Gucci's creative director in digital form, meets up with in New Tokyo and develops new collections for avatars and individuals. And these types of sort of surprise and delight collaborations are the types of things that get discussed on Discord and get reviewed by customers. You can almost see in real time consumer and gamer reactions to these types of activations. So it's very, very interesting to monitor for Gucci. And so the Gucci, it continues to maintain this relationship with Roblox in this Gucci town environment, which allows them to continue to sell and explore different digital asset and monetization opportunities on the platform. A lot of the presenters talked about interoperability and the ability to transfer or sell, and then users be able to transfer their digital assets onto different spaces. This is something that's really interesting for the brand community. Obviously, it's highly dependent on technology, but the idea that consumers can dress their avatars, sometimes retire their products into a virtual closet, and then potentially move that product around different universes is really interesting for brands, because it presents an opportunity to have their products and continue engagement with clients, not just in a particular platform in a walled universe, but all over the web. So major opportunities for brands here. And in order to take advantage of those, they really have to start engaging with consumers now, so that they build a consumer base, they build a community, and they can start to observe and understand what brands are doing. So NFTs, so another area that our brands have explored, not just Balenciaga and Gucci, but also a couple of our other brands in our portfolio are NFTs. And I keep going back to this concept of the Metaverse and Web3 having very similar characteristics and values to the luxury industry, and that I think can most easily be seen in the NFT environment. As a collectible, as a digital asset, the sort of value and the purpose of the NFT is really in this collectability, which is in community, creativity, and its scarcity and authenticity. And these are all pillars of what make luxury brands successful, which make luxury brands appealing to consumers. This kind of collector mentality. So NFTs have been an interesting way, not just to monetize trademarks in the metaverse for brands, but to have another customer touch point, another opportunity to engage with a community that could potentially be consumers, not just digitally, but in real life. Gucci had partnered with a company called Super Plastic, which has been in the digital and physical art collectible community for a while. And they're best known for their characters, Genki and Gujimon, who go on different adventures and who are very popular in like sort of the toy and model form. And so Gucci partnered with Super Plastic on creating a little bear avatar, the one that you see here, and taking this avatar on different journeys and putting it in the Gucci Flora pattern and different patterns, and also including that character in little adventures in the Gucci Vault, which is another digital platform that Gucci operates, and that can be discussed on Discord. And these NFTs, again, were wildly popular. And the popularity obviously is attributed to Gucci, but it's also attributed to the partnership that it has with Super Plastic, a very relevant, super hot content creator, and that allows Gucci to kind of delve into a new community and new market that it may not have had access to before. So this is probably, I have a couple more slides, but we're going to save those for the more trademark deep dive. But this is probably a good time to pass it over to William to talk about Suite and the NFT platform.
Thank you, Eva. Vamos a dar la palabra a William, que se va a conectar. Ahora a William Finkel, que se va a conectar por medio de videoconferencia, está de forma virtual, participando como panelista.
To join us virtually as a panelist. Hello, William. The floor is yours.
Hello. Is that working?
Hello. We can hear you, yes.
Fantastic. So if someone could bring up my presentation on support 2. We're having some technical difficulties today.
40 over my shoulder.
Okay, there we go. So I'm here with Suite. Suite is a NFT platform that does the entire, I'm sorry, I can't tell if you can, okay, thank you. We do the entire process of bringing NFTs to market. Everything from creation, ideation, to minting onto the blockchain, to distribution, sales, secondary sales, and integration with Metaverse activations. So if we want to jump to the next slide. So you can see we run both mobile and desktop, and we've worked with a bunch of big brands. We continue to work with a lot of high-profile brands and helping them bridge that gap from theory to NFTs. We like to call what we do Web 2.5, probably a term someone else has used during this conference, I would guess. But the idea is making the interaction with Web 3 something familiar to customers, meaning, you know, the sort of website we run, unless you look at the text and understand you're buying NFTs, this looks sort of like any other Web 2.0 business. And that's because Web 3 can be very complicated and very confusing to consumers. And so we want to make it accessible to brands and their customers so that they can get involved in this. So rather than having something like MetaMask, which is the third party that would have your NFTs in a wallet, we do all custodial wallets. So when you mint, you will still see your NFT on our platform, on our website, and you can access it through our website and interact with it there. So I'll give a few examples of campaigns we've done recently, and if there's questions following that, eager to discuss. So on to the next slide. So one of our big clients recently has been McLaren Racing. F1 hasn't always been very popular in the US, but it's really sort of having a moment. And McLaren is a UK-based team who, you know, probably many people in the room are familiar with. But what we did with them was we launched with a free giveaway, get people into the ecosystem, get their fans engaging, and then we began to roll out different products for them. So this car that you can see there, what we did was we sold 22 separate NFT collections to represent each piece of the car. And then if you had assembled all the pieces of the car, you would get a digital interactive replica that you could interact with on the website. And while we didn't do it on this go round with McLaren, that's something that very easily could be ported over to a Metaverse. So you collect the NFTs, you get repeat customers, and then you bring them over to the Metaverse while they're more engaged with your brand, more dedicated fans, able to collect data along the way, obviously, you know, compliant with various regulatory systems, and use that to build a deeper engagement with your fans. As much as this is a revenue opportunity, and I think this is something that Eva was saying as well, this is a fan engagement marketing opportunity. And so if it can pay for itself or have profit on top of that engagement, creating more dedicated fans is a very valuable way to go. On to the next slide. So another similar one, the term we would use for something like this is a microverse, and I don't know that that's widely used, much like Web 2.5, but it's just the idea of baby steps into this foreign ecosystem. So this was the Cleveland Cavaliers, their basketball team, and what they did is they gave away 100,000 lockers. And lockers are just empty lockers where you would store your clothes, your athletic kit, what have you. Then at future games at the Cavaliers Arena, you could purchase various pieces of clothing like the shirt you see here and put it in your locker. Then the next step is other people could come and visit your locker and they can see what uniform you've put together. And as there's a secondary market for this, if you want the old all gold outfit, which is rare, you can go and buy that or get lucky and mint those and create an all gold outfit in your locker. The next step potentially in the future is, okay, how does this microverse expand? Can you go in and use an avatar to put on these clothes? Can it connect to a larger metaverse? These are all things that are in development, if not for the Cavs, for others of our clients. On to the next slide. And so then again, you know, we're talking about marketing as much as we are about sales revenue. So a lot of our clients have come to us looking to do things to raise money and awareness for nonprofits that they're associated with. So Kia has an initiative to support dog adoption in the United States. And so what they did in their Super Bowl commercial, they introduced this RoboPup, and working with RoboDog, working with Sweet, they released 10,000 RoboDogs that people could go to Sweet and purchase, with all proceeds going to support the Pet Finder Foundation, which puts dogs in homes. So they get to support a good cause. They get the halo effect of working with that good cause. They get to interact with their fans. They learn about their fans, and they build that deeper connection. So all across the offerings that we have, there are opportunities for brands to plug and play and get into this space easily, because it is complicated. The sort of stuff that Ava's talking about is highly, highly complicated. The moving pieces and the levels of agreements I'd be fascinated to hear about. And we try and make that simple. We try and simplify it so that people can get involved. And then our last slide. And again, you know, it's not just the suite platform. We've made a dedicated landing space for McLaren's. Cleveland Cavs have their own domain built around the locker room. It's us trying to reach fans where they are and making it easy for them. And with that, I'll pass off to Tony.
Thank you. So you could put the next slide presentation on. While he's doing that, I do want to acknowledge ASIPI for a second. This is the only conference I'm aware of where the full conference is dedicated to the metaverse and legal issues. Most conferences have 1 hour. I've never seen another conference that has dedicated the whole conference to metaverse. It's really way ahead of where most people are at the moment. Can you, okay, next slide. Okay, so the metaverse, you know, right now I'd say 80 to 90% of it is a gaming platform. That's what really people are spending their money on and the like. That's probably where you've seen it more than anywhere else, is with your kids or yourself playing Fortnite or the like, or one of the other games. And what's interesting is most people are talking about the metaverse and commingling it with NFTs. And I acknowledge that NFTs at the moment is where most companies are interested and where the money is being made. But it's such a small part of where we're going. And I want to sort of focus on the e-commerce side of it and where businesses are going to be. So one of the interesting plays, when you think about the metaverse, you know, as you heard Eva talk about, you had Web 1.0, 2.0, and Web 3. So think about walking in an Apple store. Everybody knows what that looks like, right? You know what the look and feel is, the long tables, the individual products, the different color computers and the like. If you go on Apple's website, what do you see? You see a phone, you can look at it, it's pretty 2D. It doesn't look or feel like their store experience. With the metaverse, you're going to be able to walk into the Apple store and it's going to feel and look like the experience that you see. Consumers are going to gravitate toward that. That's what we're talking about in the future. We're talking about taking the real world experience and combining it with the digital experience and having it something than what it is today. So I kind of like what Dolce & Gabbana did here. They used an NFT. You buy the NFT, you get virtual clothing, but you'd also get real clothing. You get access to the back room of their metaverse, and you get private events and the like. So here is an example of using an NFT to drive consumers to their back-end store, to get into the private selection area, and the customers that were doing that, also it gave you the ability to really interact with those customers in a stronger way. Here's another one. I'm trying to give you examples of what some people are doing from an e-commerce perspective to make money. This is a famous winery in France, and they offered an NFT where they sold it. It ended up being a barrel of wine, which was essentially $300. You bought it, whoever was the high bidder, in this case was $110,000. They got the barrel of wine and had to figure out how to go to France to get it, but I guess if you can spend $110,000, you can afford to get the bottle sent to you. But it's another example of the liquor industry starting to do this. Jose Cuervo has recently moved into the metaverse. You're seeing a lot of different industries move into the metaverse and try to figure out how to make money on it, not just from an NFT, but also from a consumer standpoint and maybe even an e-commerce standpoint, like in this example. So we had a lot of fashion clients and a lot of entertainment clients approach us to help them get in the metaverse. And it made sense, right? These are clients that are B2C, consumer facing, used to taking risks. But what changed for me was when PwC approached our law firm and asked us to go in and buy property. And so we helped them buy property. You had to go in, you had to figure out how to fund it, the wallet, you had to pay for it, you had to figure out what to do with the NFT, which is essentially your lease. If you left it on the web, the security of that is very dangerous, so you had to figure out how to take that NFT off, not online. There were a lot of thinking. Then we had to start to figure out how to build the building. So we had to bring in designers, which you've met some. We had to figure out how to set the wallet up, how to fund it, and like you heard Sweet, that's something they can also help with. These are all different aspects of it. Then we started to figure out how to lease floors of their virtual building. So think about that. That's just like doing a real client, buying a building, buying the land, building the building, doing the sublease. That's where things are starting to head. One of the things that got the most press, and I think started to wake up a lot of the industry, was when JP Morgan opened up their virtual lounge. Could you play the video? So what's interesting is this is a financial brand, and you would walk in and they had a tiger for some reason walking around, which made no sense. But which is an important point, because as these traditional financial service companies went onto the web, they realized, or the metaverse, they realized they had to make it fun, right? They had to do something different than their existing services. So they tried to do this. And so when ArentFox Schiff went onto the metaverse, we were the first law firm to actually buy in the metaverse. We're now creating our office there. And one of the things I'd like to do is have a fox run across, or something with a fox. But it's the kind of thing that when you do this, you have to be a little creative and have a little bit of fun for it to actually resonate. Next. Okay, so this next slide, video, please. We've been talking about the metaverse, but I need you to appreciate that things are changing. So you're talking about wearing a headset. This is what Adobe sees as the next version of the metaverse. These are glasses. They put them on, the person walks out of bed, and there's his virtual dog, or her virtual dog. She walks into the kitchen. She's able to see her calendar, play music, and the like. These are with just regular glasses. These aren't with a headset where you're doing it. You're about to hear Apple announce a whole new product, a new pair of glasses that are, and this is called augmented reality, not virtual reality. You're looking at the real world, right? And overlaying in the real world are these visions. This is where things are going to head. Instead of looking at your phone the whole time, you're going to be looking up at each other, and you'll be being fed with this additional information. This is where we're heading. Next. Okay, so let's talk about the legal issues with all this. So there's something called on-chain and off-chain. So an on-chain is where we're going to see a lot of the e-commerce. This is where a lot of your clients are going to go if they go into the metaverse world themselves. That means that they're going to buy a piece of property. They're going to either be in one of the major properties. We bought in Decentraland, but Sandbox has a lot of people in it. These are not talking to each other, these two platforms. You have to figure out where you're going to buy. If you're going to buy an on-chain, it means you own it, essentially. If you're going to buy an off-chain, right, that means you're going into Fortnite, Roblox. You're buying something in there. They own that space. You have a license to whatever they're doing, but technically it's like having a Gmail account, right? You don't own that. You have it for the moment, but really that property is owned by Google. When you're purchasing real estate, you have to think about what platform. Are you buying on or off-chain? Question one. If you're buying on-chain, where are you buying? Decentraland, Sandbox? You have to start to look at these different platforms. It's like buying in different countries. Am I buying in Ecuador? Am I buying in Argentina? Where am I buying? And the two territories at this point are not talking to each other. However, there are a lot of treaties that are being done for interoperability, which would allow you to travel back and forth. So if I bought a Gucci purse, I'd be able to carry that from Decentraland to Sandbox, for example. So when you're looking at where to buy, I gave my designers the instruction that they had to make sure we were not buying a property in the porno zone or next to an arcade, which is very difficult because by definition, they're decentral. So you could buy your law firm, your client's shop, and you could have a porno store right next to it. There's no restrictions, there's no zoning. You have to appreciate that. So we wanted to buy near our clients so that if something went wrong, we're in the same boat with them. You have to ask, you know, what are you gonna own? How are you gonna store it? Have you heard about gas fees? As you burn these NFTs, these gas fees are the cost of burning an NFT. They're very expensive, potentially. So we were working on a project with a client that was shocked at the amount of traction it got. And the gas fees for this, it ended up being a $300 NFT. The gas fees were close to $1,000 by the time they were done. You can't predict what the gas fee is. The gas fee is going to be tied to how much activity there is at the moment to do that. So things to think about is who are going to pay for that gas fee? Are you going to pay for it? Because you don't know how to predict it. Other things, governance. Where are you going to, what kind of law is going to apply as you start to do these? These are all things you need to think about when you're buying your real estate. Blockchain domains. So you've heard about trademarks and other domains, but blockchain domains, think about it as it's a little bit different. So if I had ArentFox or Gucci ETH, that would be not only the domain, which at one point you're going to be able to type into a browser and get to their location, whatever that is, but it's also a way for me to send money. Now, the difference with this is that they're not regulated, meaning that if I took your domain, and I will tell you, if you did a search, most of these are already taken. How do you get that back? It's not the same situation that we are dealing with regard to a regular domain where there's ICANN or an authority. These are made so that they are decentralized. You'd have to have a connection in the first instance to figure out how to even find out who the owner is. Then there are ways to attack the registry or the party that's giving it out, but there's been no cases yet. By the next time we speak, we'll have some more guidance for you. We've been successful getting a couple of these back, but in many instances, it's really figuring out who registered it and how much pressure I can put on them in the real world to get them to assign it back. Be careful though, because they can burn it. And if they burn it, that means you can never get it back. Minting NFTs, which we're going to hear about in a minute, and you've heard about. There are two ways to do this. You're either the issuer or the licensor. So think about it as if you were you were given the license directly, or you had a sub-licensee that was given the license. Is the best way to think about it. If you are minting the NFT, you get to control the terms. You have privity with the person buying it. We've talked about royalties and the like. Do I want the royalties so that if they resell it, you buy a Gucci purse, Gucci could say, anytime it's resold, we get 10% of the price sent back to us, automatically, nothing that can be done. I will tell you, we had an experience recently where a client came to us. They had offered a drop, and there was a huge problem with the drop with the e-contract. In the contract, the people that wrote the code reversed one term, and that was how they could release the money. They made $30 million, way more than they ever thought with the drop. But because the money could never be released, because they wrote it that the money only could be released if refunds were higher than the purchase, which we know could never happen. So now there's $30 million that are lost to anybody. There's no way to get them back. And that was because there was a mistake in the e-contract. Something no lawyer is going to look at, right? We're not looking at this. So it's important that you have an audit done to make sure the process goes through. On the licensor, it's much easier. You just have somebody else do it for you. You go to somebody, Sweet will do it, other companies and the like. It's much more, they handle the crypto and the currency. The problem is, for a lot of your clients, how are they going to deal with crypto on their balance sheet? How are you going to deal with the government? These companies are much more efficient. They figured it out. If you're willing to take, or your client is willing to take that on, then they can be an issuer. Things to think about, we already talked about royalty structures, gas fees, we talked about that, interoperability. Most of these you've heard before. End user restrictions and rights is one I want to spend a second on. So you have something it's an NFT. You can bake in whatever restrictions you want currently. We know that there's some anti-competitive abilities in the EU and some other places where it says you can't stop the first sale doctrine, the exhaustion doctrine. This is not exhaustion. You can say, I'm selling you this and you have no right to transfer it, or if you do, here are the terms of which you transfer. Some court's going to look at that, but I don't know how they're going to fix it, because once it's burned into it, it's burned into it. So you heard about this case. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is an interesting case where somebody had a unique pair of shoes. They took a picture, they minted it, and Nike said, hey, you can't sell that. StockX's position was, look, we're just selling that he owns a picture of that shoe. That's his shoe. And so they claimed it's fair use. Think about this in a different context. I have a painting of a Picasso or somebody. Do I have the right to take a picture of that and sell that picture? No, I don't. I have the right to maybe advertise that I'm selling the picture and use the picture for that. But this case, StockX is going to have some problems. Nike recently got created yesterday and claimed that they were also selling some counterfeit. That changes the whole game, because fair use won't apply if it was a counterfeit purchase. Couple other things to think through. Privacy and confidentiality. We're starting to see class actions happen. We have a couple clients that have been sued for privacy class actions because they didn't disclose properly how they were going to share the information or what they were going to do with it. The environmental impact. My son was heavily involved in the metaverse early on. He won't touch it anymore because of how it impacts the environment. I've heard a rumor, I have no idea if it's true, but to burn one crypto NFT takes as much energy as the whole country of Ukraine uses. So there are different companies that are coming out that are figuring out how to mint and burn these NFTs without the environmental cost. I think that's going to be a big challenge for the future, but it's incredibly expensive depending on what currency you're using. Product placement. Give you an example. Let's assume you wanted to do Boca Juniors as an experience. You walk in the stadium, it looks like their stadium. You walk in, everything's great. Guess who meets you at the stadium entrance? Maradona, right? What a great idea. You got to get the Maradona rights, you got to build it, you got to spend the money and the like. You go in the stadium, now we have product placement issues. Who paid for the billboards? We do a lot of entertainment law, and we've seen two interesting cases. I've talked to you about this before. Times Square in New York, there was a movie called Vanilla Sky, I think it was, with Tom Cruise. And they had a scene where he walks through Times Square, it's totally empty. And the producers of the movie got sued because they had changed the billboards that were normally there. Second movie, Spider-Man with the Green Goblin. Sony got sued because they actually kept the brands in there, and then they claimed that it was a product placement and they didn't get paid. So you can imagine putting a stadium up, somebody's paid for the billboard rights in that. Do they have the rights to have it in the virtual game? Next slide. Oh, I can do this. Sorry. So that concludes, we tried to go through this, but we wanted to open it up to questions.
Sí, thank you, Tony. Bien, hemos finalizado con las presentaciones. Me gustaría invitar al público a nuestra sesión.
Presentations. I would like to invite the public for the QA session to interact with us. I don't know if anybody has a question.
You talk about the gas fee regarding of the metaverse and all that aspects. How is in the current cases that you're having, how it works. I mean, a client gets into any of the offices, and those are based on blockchain, and therefore they pay gas fee, or someone pays gas fee to enter or to interact, or when does it comes the gas fee?
William, you want that?
Sure. So the gas fee is what you pay to the blockchain minters to record your transaction. So when you go into the metaverse, you're usually just linking up your NFT to the metaverse. You're not actually doing a transaction a lot of the time, so there's not usually gas there. It's when you initially make something and transfer that to the purchaser's wallet, that's where the largest gas fees occur. All that being said, and this ties back to the environmental concerns, there are alternative blockchains to Ethereum out there now that the cost is a fraction of an Ethereum transaction, and the ecological impact is a fraction of the Ethereum impact. So we tend to use Polygon or Tezos, but there's several other alternatives that are a lot more efficient.
And each of those will have their own domain to some extent. It won't be an ETH, possibly.
Correct.
I have as I have the microphone, can I do the next one to avoid going around? And you also mentioned that when you burn, if someone registers ETH domain and then they burn it, you won't be able to record. Can you explain why that happens? I didn't, if I understand correct.
I think you were talking about the smart contract? Oh, you're talking about if they burn different, I think you're talking about if you burn a domain, right? Right. My understanding is, I haven't seen this done, but one of the things we advise our clients is when we've gone after a third party that has registered a domain, ArentFox Schiff.eth, one of the things that the owner can do is, if you put too much pressure, is to burn the domain, meaning that, you know, it's recorded that no one can get it back. It's burned. No one can use it in the future. You can get a different one, but you'll never get ArentFox Schiff.eth.
Well, one note on that, there's a term of how long you registered it for, so once that term expires, it does become available again. But people can burn it for 5 or 10 years, so.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? Por ahí veo.
Any further question? I saw someone raise their hand. No other questions? Please go ahead.
We heard that interoperability is technically sometimes difficult, but in your experience, where's the trend heading to? Do the brands, do the metaverse providers, do the NFT facilitators will want an inoperable system, or should we expect that the tendency would go more to have isolated worlds and people try to geographically at least keep their metaverse on their own? So what's the tendency and what we should expect? And complementary to this question, are there ways, for example, and when you're minting or programming a token and the metadata associated to the NFT, or certain contractual rights that you would include for the purposes of making this interoperable? Thanks.
So I'll jump in and take this. So from a brand perspective, it's less relevant what the brands want because the technology is going there anyway. That's what the community wants. That's just what's happening. And so for us as brands, part of the challenge is to figure out how do we navigate that new universe and how do we take advantage of it? Because I think we've seen this, countless times, not specifically in the luxury industry, but just in commerce at all. If you plant your feet and you decide not to evolve, you're just going to disappear. So I think it's important for brands to start to understand interoperability and understand how they could survive and thrive in it without putting too many restraints and controls on. Of course, as the technology evolves, and I think depending on the platform and the sophistication and Web3 maturity of the brand at the time, there may be opportunities when brands do want to put in more restrictive metadata or work with within a sort of a walled garden of a singular platform, as opposed to being in this open universe if they're not accustomed to it. But I think eventually the trend will be that brands will want that. Their communities will want that, and we go where the customers go.
And think about it differently too. So you could be a child-safe environment, right? You don't want people, you want to improve everything that comes onto that metaverse. You're not going to want somebody bringing, see-through clothing or something in if their kids are playing on there. So you might want to control the interoperability of a lot of that. So there, you could see. But my prediction is that the money will be made when there is interoperability, and unless there's a good reason not to, those environments, those platforms may not succeed. William, anything?
Sí, por favor.
No, I agree.
Thank you very much to all of you for the presentation. I have a question for Tony. You were speaking about the problems that there are in buying a land, opening an office or whatever, a store in the metaverse, choosing the right place, etc. And the Centraland, of course, is becoming the reference place for let's say, for most of us. Recently, I heard about the different options. Someone that I'm quite curious. That is to create basically your own metaverse, which is a space, a store, a firm, whatever, and then having a link, buying an advertising space in the Centraland, maybe for instance, buying a space in the fashion district is quite expensive. So not everyone can afford it. Also let's say, for instance, we're talking about fashion. Big companies can easily buy a land in the fashion district, but the others, cannot. But to have them known, this kind of strategy, of buying an advertising space just in front, for instance, of the Gucci store, could be a good one, and then creating their own metaverse somewhere else, where at the end someone that is in the Centraland gets as easily as getting into the Gucci store, for instance. So I was wondering whether this kind of solution could be considered having your own domain and then having a profile on a social media, because at the end now the Centraland is the reference place, but at the end you are buying a space in a space that is owned by someone else. So if you have your own metaverse, you can create link buying, for instance, advertising spaces in different places.
So let me try to answer this, because I want to make sure I'm getting your question right. So if you go in Decentraland, if you've been to Tokyo, I feel like it's a lot like Tokyo. So there's an electronic area, there's a gaming district, but in both of those areas, there's porno stores, there's arcades, even though it's called that, they try to have that area town for it, it's not. But if you buy the property in any of those, you own the property. So in Decentraland, they have a fashion area, it's called a fashion district. They tried to make a mall there. And so they're trying to attract brands to buy in that space, but you own it. So it's not like creating your own, it's a little bit different. If you buy in Roblox, you have an area and you have a license for them, but you don't own it. It's the best you have is that territory. So that's the difference between the two. It is possible, and we have clients that have wanted to create their own metaverse, but then that's a lot more complicated, right? Where are they getting the revenue from? They're going to need enough people to really come on there to do it. I think that's even more expensive, but buying in Decentraland is no different than getting on Rodeo Drive or being in the alley, which is a lot cheaper. But you got to get lucky and you got to come early because those prices are going up. And then there'll be another area of town. I mean, you guys look at like other areas, like Soho started to pop up. You know what I mean? Instead of Fifth Avenue. There's going to be new areas, and somebody with your power has the ability to be a magnet tenant.
Yeah, and I would add that, the difference between the physical world and this new metaverse, this virtual world, we've been talking about parallels between real life and the metaverse. The one thing that's not replicated is that the metaverse is boundless, is limitless, there are no walls, right? So the zoning limitations that we have in real life, the economic limitations in pricing out a small brand from purchasing on Fifth Avenue or in Soho, they don't necessarily exist in the metaverse yet or in the same way. And so I think, we don't know what the future will bring. You suggested that maybe it will be better for the brands, or it may be less confusing to consumers even for brands to create, once there's obviously interoperability, a separate sort of, branded metaverse. That may be the case. That may be how it'll evolve. Right now, because it's so complex to do that, and brands often need to work with partners and platforms to move quickly and test and to try, they're going to need to be in these communal spaces. So for now, I think that we're dealing with Sandbox, Decentraland, and these platforms as the first iteration of that. And we'll see. Gucci just announced in February that it's purchased some land in the Sandbox. So TBD on what it'll look like.
Yeah. And who knows which of these are going to survive?
Yeah.
So
I'd also add
William, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's an interesting question, right? Is scarcity needed or of value in this world, right? Scarcity in Metaverse is a construct borrowed from where we are. There's no need that, each pixel could be a billion stories deep and you could be surrounded by infinite supply, but humans don't seem to like that. So it's an interesting question as people go to the Metaverse, how much they're going to value scarcity even if they don't have to. Yeah, that's it.
Ok, gracias. Hay una persona esperando para otra pregunta más.
Thank you. From a practical standpoint, do you presently recommend your clients to register their products or services as virtual products and services with the USPTO? And if so, how does that offer you an advantage if it's violated, your rights are violated in one of these Roblox, Decentraland, or in Metaverse in general?
Well, so yes, we do recommend that to our clients now as a defensive posture. Unclear whether it's completely necessary for brands that have already robust portfolios. Their traditional, classes of, registrations in traditional classes should be sufficient to defend their marks and enforce their marks. But if it's there, why not do it? Because most brands are starting to explore this space. They want to enter it. It adds an additional layer of protection. Again, we're not sure whether it's really needed, but it's nicer to file a complaint with this robust list of, even if it's just optics, robust list of classes and categories of goods that are covered. So I'd say yes from a defensive posture.
Yeah, and a little bit will also depend on how strong the portfolio of your client is, right? Like Yves Saint Laurent has they have digital and they have clothing and they have a lot of stuff, but let's assume all you did is motor oil. That's all you had. Well, how are you going to explain that somebody's doing an oil, or let's assume it's a car thing on an NFT or in virtual? It's not a bad idea to have something as a territory marker for that. But I agree, whether it's enforced, I have I'd rather have it than not.
Okay, thank you. Bueno, se nos ha...
Thank you. We ran out of time. Therefore, I finalize this panel. I want to thank you for your attendance. And I want to ask a big round of applause for our panel members.